What if the next recession isn't coming, but already here? While Washington insists the economy is resilient, debt is exploding, foreclosures are accelerating, and entire state budgets are running on fumes. Moody's warns nearly 1/3 of US GDP is already in recession territory. Pension funds are drying up, credit ratings are falling, and families are fleeing by the hundreds of thousands. The American dream has turned into a countdown clock. This isn't a forecast. It's already happening. These are the 12 states collapsing first as the US slides into its most dangerous downturn in decades. Stick around to see which state is just days away from running out of money. Let's dive in. On number 12, Colorado. Colorado's economy once shone with tech-driven growth and mountain resort wealth, but a closer look reveals fragility beneath the veneer. Denver and Boulder attract talent, yet housing costs soar, with median prices hovering near lofty levels that outpace wage growth. Local households devote a rising share of income to shelter, stressing budgets and delaying investments in schools and health services. The job market, though vibrant in some subsectors, is uneven. Layoffs in tech and related industries have risen as capital cools. Commercial real estate faces vacancy spikes and rent discounts, squeezing small landlords and forcing property owners to renegotiate loan terms. The state budget mirrors these pressures, with revenue gaps widening as sales taxes and energy-related income soften. Pension liabilities loom large, adding a long-term debt layer to an already tight fiscal situation. Tourism, a traditional stabilizer, loses steam as travel costs rise and visitors pull back, affecting hospitality and recreation sectors. In rural areas, population outflow compounds underinvestment in infrastructure, leaving roads, bridges, and water systems aging without adequate funding. Taken together, these dynamics create a feedback loop. Higher costs, slower investment, and weakened public services feed a sense of economic brittleness. If the downturn deepens, Colorado's growth engines risk stalling, its budgetary cushions evaporating faster than anticipated, and its communities facing a protracted period of adjustment. Number 11, Michigan. Michigan's long-standing reliance on a few heavy industries makes it especially sensitive to macro shocks. Despite pockets of revival in manufacturing and tech, widespread wages remain depressed relative to national averages, and worker mobility is constrained by regional disparities. The housing market shows distress signals, price growth stalls, and mortgage defaults rise as households stretch to keep up with living costs. Local governments face tightening tax bases just as demand for public services intensifies, pressuring schools, infrastructure, and safety programs. The state's fiscal outlook is further challenged by pension obligations and debt service that constrain flexibility during downturns. Energy-related sectors, including manufacturing support, can falter in tandem with global demand shifts, spiraling into layoffs and reduced consumer spending. Infrastructure maintenance lags behind needs, with aging transportation networks and water systems requiring capital that is increasingly scarce. The economy's uneven recovery leaves rural and smaller cities particularly exposed to revenue shocks, unemployment hotspots, and business closures. In such a climate, fragile consumer confidence can erode quickly, triggering cautious consumer behavior, delayed investments, and further contraction. The result is a cycle where employment stability, local budgets, and social services are all under duress, casting a shadow over Michigan's longer-term recovery prospects. Number 10, Virginia. Virginia's proximity to federal activity has long been a double-edged sword, abundant opportunity marshaling public dollars, yet heavy exposure to federal budget cycles. When federal spending tightens, local economies feel the impact immediately through job losses, contract suspensions, and reduced procurement. The housing market bears the strain as mortgage rates rise and incomes struggle to keep pace with cost of living increases, narrowing the buyer pool and increasing delinquencies. Local governments face revenue volatility as state and federal funds shift, compressing services and delaying capital projects. The business climate in Virginia's corridor regions can deteriorate quickly when federal programs slow down, nudging startups and mid-sized firms towards slower hiring or relocation. Infrastructure demands persist, but financing remains a constraint, limiting upgrades to roads, transit, and utilities that communities rely on for growth. Education and healthcare systems absorb budgetary shocks as public support contracts, intensifying social challenges and potentially widening regional disparities. In this environment, confidence erodes and consumer spending contracts, further weakening demand across sectors. The cumulative effect is a state that appears resilient on paper, but remains vulnerable to the fine-tuned tremors of federal policy, with local economies bearing the brunt as uncertainty grows and stabilization takes longer than expected. Number 9. Delaware. Delaware, home to just over 1 million residents, has quietly become one of the most financially fragile states in the country. Its economy, heavily dependent on corporate registrations, chemical manufacturing, and banking, is shrinking under pressure from falling profits and declining federal transfers. Corporate tax receipts, which fund nearly 30% of Delaware's budget, dropped 14% in 2024, the largest decline in 2 decades. As more companies incorporate in tax-friendly states like Texas and Florida, Delaware's business haven model is eroding fast. The state's 2025 budget deficit is projected at $1.1 billion, or roughly $2,500 per resident. Households aren't faring better. The median home price sits around $370,000, while median household income is $76,000, a widening gap that pushes debt-to-income ratios to unsustainable levels. Home affordability has collapsed. It now takes 38% of monthly income to service a typical mortgage. Meanwhile, foreclosure filings jumped 27% year over year, especially in Newcastle County and Dover. Unemployment rose to 4.6%, and job creation in key sectors like finance and manufacturing fell 11% in the past year. Inflation remains sticky, with grocery and energy costs up over 6% annually. Delaware's state pension system, with $8.4 billion in obligations, is just 65% funded, while local governments face growing shortfalls in teacher and police pensions. Even its small size magnifies risk. When one major employer downsizes, entire counties feel the shock. Credit card delinquency rates have reached 6.3%, among the highest in the Mid-Atlantic. Delaware's image as a quiet, stable corporate state is crumbling under economic stress. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska's economy has always run on oil, but when crude prices fall, the entire state trembles. In 2025, Alaska's dependency on petroleum revenue, which funds nearly 40% of its operating budget, has become its greatest liability. The state's per-barrel break-even is $76, yet oil has hovered near $71 for months, forcing Juneau to burn through reserves at record speed. The state's budget shortfall stands at $1.2 billion, and the permanent fund, once Alaska's pride, is now being raided just to cover payroll. Meanwhile, federal funds account for another 40% of total spending, a dangerous ratio if Washington enacts cuts during a nationwide recession. Population decline is accelerating. Alaska has lost over 12,000 residents annually for 3 consecutive years as workers flee to the lower 48 for better wages and lower costs. The median home price in Anchorage remains high at $394,000, while the median household income is $86,300, creating affordability gaps despite outward migration. Energy jobs are evaporating. The oil and gas sector employed nearly 13,500 workers a decade ago, but now supports barely 8,900. Tourism, the state's second pillar, dropped 9% in 2024, with cruise passenger traffic still below pre-pandemic levels. Even the real estate market is stalling. Home sales fell 18% year over year, and inventory has ballooned 32% as more residents list properties to leave. Rural areas face unemployment exceeding 8%, and grocery prices are staggering. Milk at $7.50 a gallon, bread over $6 in some regions. Alaska's famed independence is proving unsustainable in a global slowdown. Number 7. New Mexico. New Mexico sits at the crossroads of government dependency and energy risk, a fatal combination in a recession. Nearly 43% of the state's budget comes from federal funding, while another 30% of GDP relies on oil and gas. When both sectors wobble, collapse becomes inevitable. Over 22,000 federal employees in New Mexico are exposed to layoffs or pay freezes. Budget analysts warned that even a 10% cut in federal contracts could wipe out 3% of the state's GDP overnight. Meanwhile, oil market swings have shredded fiscal stability. In 2024, revenue from oil royalties fell 18%, forcing Santa Fe to project a $900 million deficit for 2026. The housing market, once a quiet refuge, is unraveling fast. Albuquerque's median home price of $327,000 has fallen 9% since 2023, while inventory surged 24.7%. Foreclosure filings have doubled within a year, and mortgage delinquency now sits at 4.8%. 13%, among the highest in the Southwest. New Mexico's poverty rate is 18.4%, and median household income of $61,000 can't keep pace with rising rents and grocery costs. Employment growth stalled at 0.4%, while youth unemployment exceeds 9%. Violent crime rates, already 70% above the national average, are further deterring new investment. Even the public pension system is deteriorating, carrying $14.6 billion in unfunded obligations, just 62% funded. Tourism, film production, and manufacturing, the state's diversification hopes, all shrank in 2024 amid weaker consumer demand. With collapsing oil revenue, federal dependence, and a rising cost of living, New Mexico stands exposed to every shockwave of a national recession. Number 6. Nevada. Nevada's post-pandemic boom is officially over. The Silver State, built on entertainment, construction, and speculation, now faces the fastest economic cooldown in America. Foreclosure filings reached 1 in every 326 homes, the highest in the nation, while unemployment climbed to 5.4%, up from 3.9% just a year ago. Las Vegas, once the symbol of endless growth, now leads in property distress. Inventory exploded 44.8% year over year, marking the steepest increase in 12 consecutive months. Median home prices fell 2.2%, but insiders warn another 10 to 12% decline is likely as tourism softens and job losses rise. The state's dependency on volatile revenue streams is brutal. Gaming taxes fund 42% of Nevada's general budget, and casino revenues are down 8% compared to 2022. Commercial real estate tells an even darker story. Office vacancies have reached 24%, while loan delinquencies jumped 38% year over year. Las Vegas households are drowning in debt. The average mortgage payment now tops $2,180 per month, while the median household income sits at $78,000, meaning over 43% of take-home pay goes toward housing. Credit card delinquency rates hit 5.9%, a record high for the state. Even tourism, Nevada's lifeblood, is faltering. Visitor numbers are down 7%, and convention bookings dropped 15% as companies cut travel budgets. Construction jobs have declined 12%, and Clark County now reports over 14,000 vacant homes awaiting sale or foreclosure. Statewide tax revenue fell 6.3% in 2024, prompting warnings of a $1 billion shortfall by 2026. The mirage of prosperity is evaporating, revealing an economy stretched thin by debt, speculation, and dependence on luck. Number 5. Louisiana. Louisiana's economy has been treading water for decades, and now the tide is turning against it completely. With 50% of the state's budget funded by federal dollars and 19% of residents in poverty, Louisiana is one of America's most economically fragile states. The median household income is just $56,000, while the cost of essentials like rent, insurance, and utilities has climbed 14% in a single year. New Orleans, once a symbol of resilience, now ranks as the worst performing housing market in the United States. Home prices fell 7.1% year over year, with further declines of 5.8% projected by mid-2025. The median price in Orleans Parish is down to $245,000, while average days on market have soared from 41 to 74 days. Foreclosure filings rose 34% statewide, and 1 in every 402 homes is now in distress. The state's oil and gas sector, historically its lifeline, faces growing instability. Energy employment has dropped 11% since 2022, while federal environmental regulations and volatile crude prices continue to choke investment. Meanwhile, insurance premiums have become unbearable. Hurricane-related claims from storms like Ida and Laura cost over $20 billion, forcing multiple insurers to pull out. Commercial real estate is also collapsing. Baton Rouge and Shreveport office vacancies stand at 23% and 25% respectively. Retail space vacancies hit 11%, a 20-year high. Louisiana's public pension system carries $18.9 billion in unfunded liabilities, and the 2026 fiscal deficit is expected to exceed $1.3 billion. In short, Louisiana faces a storm with no levee high enough. A mixture of climate risk, economic stagnation, and political dysfunction. Number 4. Florida. Florida's boom turned into a ticking bomb. After 3 straight years of explosive migration and record home building, the cracks are now visible across every corner of the state. Florida currently has 9 of the 15 most overvalued housing markets in America. Cities like Tampa, plus 42%, Cape Coral, plus 37%, and Northport, plus 40%, are all dangerously inflated. The median home price statewide is $417,000, but the median household income is just $67,917, meaning the average family would need to earn nearly $120,000 to afford a typical mortgage at 7% interest. Foreclosure rates are exploding. 1 in every 242 homes is in default, ranking Florida second worst in the nation. Lakeland alone sees 1 in 172 homes under foreclosure, the highest rate in America. Insurance is the next disaster. Hurricane Ian caused $112.9 billion in damages, and insurance premiums have risen over 45% since 2022. Homeowners are paying an average of $6,000 per year, triple the national average. Major insurers like Farmers and Delaware have already exited the state, leaving millions scrambling for coverage. The rental market is also deteriorating. Vacancy rates have surged to 10%, and HOA fees are up 15% year over year. Incomes can't keep up. Florida's job growth slowed to 0.8%, while inflation still runs at 4.2%. Tourism revenue is down 6%, and the hospitality sector lost 18,000 jobs in 2024. Despite its demographic strength, Florida is walking into a perfect storm: overvalued real estate, collapsing insurance, and slowing migration. Investors who bought at the top of the market in 2022 may now face 30 to 40% losses. Number 3, California. California's economy, once the 5th largest in the world, is now crumbling under the weight of its own excess. The state faces a record $58 billion budget deficit, the largest in its history, and is pulling $12 billion from reserves just to keep operations running. The median home price sits at a staggering $825,000, requiring an income of $237,000 to buy, while the actual median household income is just $96,500. That means the average Californian household earns less than half of what's needed for a median home. Monthly mortgage payments now average $5,900, consuming 36% of income, the highest ratio in the nation. Unemployment sits at 5.5%, with 239,000 residents leaving the state in 2024 alone, the biggest domestic migration loss in America. Meanwhile, California carries $244.9 billion in unfunded pension liabilities and $20 billion in unemployment debt. The public education system faces $5 billion in funding gaps, and tax revenues from Silicon Valley have plunged 21% as tech profits collapse. Commercial real estate is collapsing at unprecedented speed. San Francisco's office vacancy hit 28.8%, Los Angeles is at 22%, and statewide commercial foreclosures now exceed 187 per month, nearly 30% of the national total. The iconic LA gas company Tower, once valued at $632 million, now faces foreclosure at $200 million. Homelessness surged past 181,000 people, while median rent in Los Angeles hit $2,950. Energy costs are 42% above the national average, and utility bills rose another 11% in 2024. California's mix of fiscal mismanagement, overregulation, and housing insanity has turned the Golden State into a warning sign. Its economy is still vast, but like its cliffs, it's eroding fast, one collapse at a time. Number 2, Illinois. Illinois isn't just broke, it's structurally broken. Decades of corruption, reckless spending, and pension abuse have turned the state into a case study in economic decay. The numbers are terrifying. Every taxpayer owes $38,800 just to cover existing debt. The state faces $172.8 billion in unfunded obligations, ranking 48th for fiscal health, just above New Jersey and Connecticut. The 2026 budget deficit is projected between $3.2 and $5.1 billion. The teachers' retirement system, once the backbone of Illinois' public workforce, is now just 34% funded and could run dry within 2 decades. Tens of thousands of retired educators depend on a system that cannot sustain them. Chicago, the state's economic engine, is collapsing under similar pressure. Property taxes have risen 16% since 2021, while violent crime is up 34% in 5 years. Businesses are fleeing downtown, and office vacancy rates hit 18.8%, with rents plunging to $27.30 per square foot from $34 pre-pandemic. Nearly 1,976 bank-owned properties sit idle across the metro area, the highest in the nation. The state's population continues to shrink. Illinois lost 84,000 residents in 2024, marking the 9th straight year of decline. With every departure, tax revenues fall, worsening the debt spiral. Electricity costs are 18% above the national average, and inflation-adjusted incomes have stagnated since 2019. Illinois has no easy fix. Raising taxes drives more people away, cutting spending risks, defaulting on promises already made. When the next recession tightens credit markets, Illinois may become the first major state since the Great Depression to openly discuss insolvency, a collapse not of politics but of mathematics. Number 1. New Jersey. New Jersey's crisis is unlike any other. It's already running out of time. State auditors warned that New Jersey has just 2 days of operating reserves, the lowest cushion of any U.S. state. Each taxpayer owes $44,500 to keep the lights on, while unfunded liabilities exceed $220 billion. The teacher's pension fund is only 34.7% funded, the weakest major pension plan in America. Despite tax hikes, debt continues to snowball. The 2026 fiscal outlook projects a $5.3 billion deficit, and the rainy day fund could vanish in a quarter if revenues dip just 5%. Housing adds another fragility layer. New Jersey has the second highest foreclosure rate, 1 in every 359 homes. In Atlantic City, it's 1 in 200. Median home prices climb 19% year over year to $539,000, creating a bubble as inventory swells and mortgage rates hover near 7%. Office vacancies in Newark, Jersey City exceed 19.4%, with 42 commercial foreclosures monthly. Taxes are suffocating residents. Property taxes average $9,800 per household yearly, the highest in the nation. Energy costs are 33% above the national average, and insurance premiums jumped 12% in 2024. Despite these costs, state GDP grew just 0.7%, far below the national average. New Jersey's economy is the ultimate paradox: high incomes but higher obligations. Residents earn more but keep less. Small businesses drown under regulation, and infrastructure spending barely touches decaying roads and rail lines. The Garden State is broke, overtaxed, and out of options. When recession pressure hits, New Jersey won't just face a budget crisis, it'll face an existential one. A fiscal implosion 2 decades in the making is at the doorstep. These 12 states are already crumbling, and the rest of the nation may not be far behind. The data is clear, the warnings are loud. The question now is, how prepared are you? Hit subscribe to stay ahead of what's coming, and drop a comment below. Do you live in one of these states? Let's hear your story.